All right, so let's get started here. So just as ways of introductions, my name is Rich Graves. I'm on the product management team here at CA for Cloud Service Management. And again, I have Sandeep and Prasanna on the line as well. Sandeep will be helping out from the demo perspective, and Prasanna will be the guy behind the scenes answering many questions and helping out if we need him. So we really wanted to give everyone in the customer community, as well as partners and CA employees, a chance to really take a look at what's coming in the Clover release, provide us any feedback they have at this point, and for us to be able to react to that, and also get you all prepared for what's coming in November. And I'll talk a little bit more also about the roadmap, as well as our release cadence and some of the things we're trying to do based on some customer feedback we've had over the last few months and last few releases. We are going to be talking a little bit about future things beyond the Clover release, so beyond that November release. So this is our standard CA disclaimer here. And again, we'll do an overview quickly and PowerPoint on the key features of the Clover release. Sandeep will do a demonstration next of those key features. I'll come back to presentation to do roadmap and a couple things related to how we want to improve things from an operational and logistics perspective as well. And then we'll end with summary and questions. We want to make sure we at least have 10 to 15 minutes for questions. But again, we encourage you to ask questions throughout. If there's anything that comes up related to what we're talking about, ask the question. If it's something we want to discuss on the phone, certainly Sandeep, Prasanna, or myself will raise that and we'll discuss it on the phone. Okay, so the Clover release, and again, if you're not familiar with sort of the names of our releases, if you know back in fall of 2014, we used a code name called Acorn. Didn't really expose that much to customers, but then after that, we really wanted to just move forward with these code names. The releases are so short as far as the lifespan, because we do releases, and we'll talk more about this, very frequently. That having release numbers just gets confusing, and time frames get messy. So we're just doing these release names. So Clover, we follow lucky symbols in alphabetical order. So we did Acorn, Bamboo, Clover. The next release coming in a few months will be Dragonfly. So just a nice way for us to use some lucky symbols there and hopefully come up with some fun names there as well. Well, this release really has three sort of key themes and three key functional areas. So the first being service provider control. The majority of the customers that are using Cloud Service Management are service providers, so managing customers outside of their own internal organization. So a lot of the ideas on the community, a lot of the enhancement requests we get are related to service providers. So the first key feature, and I'll talk more about this, is really enabling service providers to link their categorizations to the organizations that they support, and of course make the process of supporting those customers much easier. Because when an analyst starts working on a ticket for a specific customer, maybe a phone call comes in, they don't have to think about what contractual agreement do we have with this customer. Is this customer at Microsoft Office support, or do they get Microsoft Office and network and phone? So it's a much easier way to group that and be able to make the whole experience much easier for analysts answering the phones and dealing with tickets for external customers. The second item relates to an enhanced mail processing. So with the Bamboo MR1 release, we did some improvements to handle keywords in the subject line, the ticket number in the subject line being really the unique identifier. So previously you had to have a reply and certain other parameters in the email replies to get it to update a ticket. So we've made that much better. Really heard a lot of feedback from customers that they wanted to improve email processing. It's still a common way for end users to interact with IT. So we're also simplifying some other mail processing rules to be able to handle out of office auto reply messages. So you're not, adding those to the ticket or creating new tickets in the system. Because of those messages coming in. So an easy way to discard those and give admins a lot more control in that area. The last item here is on mobility. In the Bamboo release, we released a new version of the mobile app that added single sign-on capabilities. It did not have all the different single sign-on options for different users, so we wanted to improve that and add in form-based authentication for single sign-on. So when self-service users are using that mobile app, if your organization is using single sign-on, you have a much easier way to enable them and not have them have to think about a username and password that's unique to Cloud Service Management. Okay. So to go into the specifics, I'll drill down into each of these key new features, then hand over to Sandeep for a demonstration. So I think the easiest way to talk about this feature related to managed service providers is to give sort of a problem statement, almost like, if you're familiar with Agile, here's sort of our user story. So as a managed service provider, so an organization supporting multiple external customers, I see the same set of categorization records across all customers. I would like to see CCTI records filtered by request or organization to reflect the type of services available to the customer. Okay? So I'll jump over to a diagram. I think this makes it much easier to understand, I think, in the way we implement it and the approach to solving the problem. So if you think about today, in the current solution in Cloud Service Management, the existing version, if it's a managed service provider supporting 2 different customers and has a contract with customer A to say, we will do all of your Microsoft support, and has a contract with customer B that says, we will do all of your Linux support. In the system itself, both of those customers see the exact same categorization structure. So when an analyst gets a call from customer A, they're going to open up that categorization dropdown, that CCTI dropdown, and they're going to see every single category in the system. Customer B, who only contractually has Linux support, they're going to open it up and see every single CCTI in the system, regardless of their contract. So we really wanted to simplify that, and the core focus was on simplifying it for the analyst, because we don't want to make the analyst think about what does this customer have an obligation to support. What are we what are we supporting them for? They want to just think about how they best deliver service to the customer. So this is the use case now with what we call CCTI families, or categorization families, in this new Clover release. So customer A, who contractually only has Microsoft support, is now only seeing those Microsoft categories: Office, Application Office, Server, Windows, Database, SQL, and everything under that. Only those that are linked to a Microsoft CCTI family that was then related to the organization. Customer B, who contractually has Linux support, is only seeing the CCTIs that are associated with Linux that they've defined in a CCTI family. So essentially in this case, 2 customers, simple to understand. Each one has one CCTI family associated with it, and under that CCTI family you associate all the CCTIs that make sense for this sort of contract or this family, and then associate that to one or more customers. So you could group your CCTIs into specific families based on sort of an offering you have as an MSP to your different customers. And if customer C comes along and wants Microsoft and Linux, it's really easy to just add them and associate them to those 2 CCTI families, and they immediately have access. Okay? So to explain this in a little more detail, and I think it'll help to see the actual demonstration, but the end goal is really limiting the categories that a particular organization can use. So when the analyst goes to a ticket, associates a user with the ticket, and if you are using CCTI families, that list on the categorization is automatically filtered to only what that organization has access to. And also, the CCTI family is a new administrative object which allows you to group together categorizations under this family and assign that family to one or more organizations. So in the end, it enables better grouping and assignment of categories. And there's a note on the bottom which I think is really important to make sure. This is separate from organizational-based security. We want to make this a very flexible feature that if you're using organization-based security today, this works for you. If you're not using organization-based security, this still works for you. So this is a feature we want to keep separate from that to be able to allow you to have a lot more flexibility based on the type of delivery model that you choose to use. Okay? So we'll talk about this more in the demonstration, but I wanted to set that up before Sandeep gives the demo there. Okay. The next feature is on inbound email improvements. So again, we made some nice improvements over the last few releases related to handling inbound emails and that ticket key being sort of the unique identifier in the subject line. We also wanted to handle, and this is a request that many of you have made over the years, is being able to better handle out-of-office messages, auto replies, and better handle those depending on different languages as well. So while the system has had some features to handle these in the past, we really wanted to expose that to customers and give them the control to add on to those out-of-the-box features or change them based on what they need. So there is a new configuration parameter that allows you to define different keywords in the subject line of an email that is sent to the system and be able to discard those emails if the keyword is found in that subject line. So if you see, out of office as a keyword, we will discard that message. If you see something like, auto reply, we can discard that message. And this is totally configurable for you as an admin. So if you have multiple languages that you support, if you're supporting Spanish and English, you may want to adjust the keywords based on that. But it's completely configurable for admins. This new configuration parameter that you can modify and set up to meet your needs for inbound email processing. Additionally, we have also added all the different supported file types that the system allows as attachments. So all the different file types that are supported to upload to, say, a ticket as an attachment, those are now all supported through email. In the past, it was a limited subset of those. So we've extended that support. I know there's a few ideas on the community related to different different formats of attachments sent with emails. So those are all now supported, so we have consistent support across the different areas for attachments as well. Next, on the mobile app improvements, with this release, we really just wanted to extend the single sign-on feature to more of our customers. We realized immediately after releasing this that several of our customers, releasing the single sign-on feature in the mobile app, that several of our customers could not get it to work. So we wanted to basically enable all different types of single sign-on and specifically form-based single sign-on. So I know it's hard to see in the screenshots. There's that black screen, which doesn't always show up great in screenshots. That's the login screen of the mobile app. So that self-service user that uses the mobile app, they check that checkbox there that says use domain credentials. I'll try to highlight that. They check that checkbox, and then from there they can then enter their domain username, domain password, and their actual domain to be able to log in with their domain credentials rather than having to have unique credentials for single sign-on, or excuse me, for CSM. Okay, so that should hopefully increase adoption of the mobile app for your self-service users and make it work for more of our customer environments. One note on that, if you do want to test this ahead of time before our launch, we are looking for customers to validate this who have form-based single sign-on. If you could reach out to me or just put a note in the Q&A, one of us will get back to you because we do have test versions of that we'd love to make sure are working right for you before we go live with them. Next is Outbound Web Services. So this is a smaller enhancement that I think will really improve things for our users who are using Outbound Web Services. If you're not familiar with Outbound Web Services, it's essentially a feature that allows you to call a external system, so a web service, from a ticket action. So from one of those workflow actions in a ticket, you can trigger a call to an external system using web services and be able to communicate and get data back from that system. It's often used from, if you're calling an external system, maybe pass some information to an external ticketing system or trigger another system based on a workflow action, maybe an approval system or survey tool or all sorts of different things that could be done there. Essentially, we've extended the type of payload that can be sent with a REST call from that. So previously, it was form-based parameters. Now we have the option for the admin to create a complete payload, and it can now support REST calls with multi-structured JSON and XML as payload for those requests. So really just enabling more complex calls and you can communicate with a wider variety of systems now with REST calls from our Outbound Web Services. Okay. All right. Last but certainly not least, there's a couple additional improvements that I think are worth mentioning as well, and this will come up a little bit in the roadmap as well. From the operational improvements, so really improvements that we've made to the architecture and the product itself that aren't necessarily features, but things that I think will benefit all customers, really is what we're talking about here. First is we've made a lot of architectural improvements to reduce the amount of downtime during maintenance and upgrades. So we've certainly heard this feedback loud and clear that, an outage time of 4 hours, of 6 hours over a weekend is not something that customers want. Our goal and what we're working towards, and we think is absolutely achievable, is to get to 0 downtime. So when we do a release, like a Clover sometime in the future, that there's no downtime. There may be an interruption to in-flight transactions or something, but that there's no outage on your system is really the goal we're working towards. We've seen significant improvements in our own internal testing so far. We're really excited about Clover really reducing that downtime, and talking to our engineering team, we can get closer and closer over the next couple of releases with the goal of getting to 0, hopefully soon. So that's something I think that'll really benefit everyone and really reducing that downtime during maintenance, patching, and upgrades as well. We've also upgraded some of our embedded components. We have a scheduler that we use under the covers to schedule many of the automated tasks in the system. That is being upgraded, which will really allow us to be on the latest version of that and improve some of the speed and the overall architecture as well. And then last but certainly not least, there's been about 65 plus customer-reported bugs that we have resolved in this release as well. And there'll probably be a few more resolved before the actual rollout occurs. Okay. So now I'm going to pass it over to Sandeep, and while we're doing that, while Sandeep is getting ready to share, any questions on the phone about what I've just shared, and Sandeep is about to demo sort of the key things as well. Okay. No questions.
Yeah, actually, I do have a question if it's still open.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
The phone app that you have looks like it's for self-service users. Is there any plans for a analyst application or some form of analyst session that could be used for the phone application?
Yep, good question. So that is something we'd like to do, the analyst mobile app. At this point, we don't have any immediate plans for that, but it is something we certainly heard and seen on the community as well. So no immediate or short-term plans for an analyst mobile app, but it's definitely something we understand is a need.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
Sure. All right, Sandeep, I can see your Chrome window with Ticket Center open if you'd like to go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you, Rich. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much again for joining us today and seeing what we have to offer in Clover. So I'll get started first with the classification of the CCTI families that Rich was talking about. And really, I'll start with kind of what we have today in terms of what an analyst sees and how the CCTI families will help improve that experience. So let's assume that, as a service provider, you are, or even for an enterprise for that matter, you have different departments like HR and IT and so on and so forth that may have different categorizations built in. And usually the analyst in today's world sees pretty much everything. So I'll take this example where a service provider has 2 types of customers, or in this case 2 customers. One is a Microsoft shop, and the other customer is more cloud computing. And if you go in today as the analyst, as I'm doing here, if I look at the CCTI, I'm going to see pretty much everything. I'm going to see, pretty much a list of all the categorizations that the admin has created for me. And really the pain point that we're trying to solve is, as a Microsoft analyst or as this analyst for this customer, I should be able to only see, the Microsoft related ones. Okay. So let's go about and see how we would go about configuring that. And again, we've tried to keep this very super simple for our admins. We've heard quite a bit about this particular idea on the community, and we've gone back and forth on the community itself in terms of how we would like to address it as well. So again, as Rich mentioned, on the admin side, we are starting with a new admin form called CCTI Families. And when you go in there, you can then go ahead and create a grouping, almost like you're creating a filter of categorizations that would be available to this this analyst based on the requester force organization. Okay. So let me go ahead and just create a couple of quick ones here, just to kind of get started, and then we can see how that affects the analyst experience. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of categorization records for a Microsoft customer. So let's just say software, and I'm going to go with PC software. So here, the way we create the CCTI family is not really go down into all the 4 levels, but as we have seen with customers, really the top 2 levels drive the other levels. So again, we want to keep it simple enough, but yet give enough granularity and control to the admin to create these kinds of groupings. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and say, this class and category and everything underneath that. So the type and the item related to this will be linked to an organization. So in this case, let me go ahead and put in customer A, who's my Microsoft shop. And as you can see here, I have this checkbox also for inheriting all the child organizations. So you don't have to go and have every site related to this particular CCTI family. You can pretty much go at the level that you think is the right one, and then inherit all the child organizations. Obviously, you can also do just one level if you wanted to not have all the children inherited there. Now, as soon as you do this, you'll see that in this case, customer A also had a Boston office as its child organization, and I've got both of them linked up here. Now, if I go back to my ticket, and this is again a user from customer A, and I look up the CCTI now, again, it has just got filtered, right? So now I don't see any of the other hardware, the provisioning, the mainframe, the enterprise, all of that stuff. I see only the ones that I want to see based on this person, or rather this organization. And obviously over here, when you go in, you can create a whole bunch of records from a class and category thing and create that as a CCTI and have different organizations also linked up. Now, just for creating a second one as well, I'll just go ahead and say, cloud computing, and create one more for customer B, as we talked about, which is the cloud computing customer that this service provider has. So let me just go ahead and create this one and link customer B to that so that we can see the difference there. And in this case, customer B does not have any children, even though I have set the inherit. So you'll see it's just that particular customer there, or that particular org record. So let me clear this, put customer B in here. And now if I go back to the CCTI, I'm only going to see the cloud computing CCTIs here. So again, this is a very simple way of segregating the classifications and really helping that analyst get to the right categorization as quickly as possible based on that requester's organization. Okay. Couple things to note here. If you do not create a CCTI family, it is business as usual. So what you see today is what you're going to get. So this also gives you a good way of rolling it out over time to say, all right, I want to take this one customer or this one department, for example, HR, and enable just the HR analyst to see only their specific ones. Everything else, like your IT and everybody else, will still continue to see all the CCTIs. So there's a very nice, kind of a step-by-step way that you can enable this for your customers or your departments. Okay. There are a couple of other things to note. Because the CCTIs are linked to certain forms, so for example, you might have certain things only for change or only for service request. So if you are obviously not on the right form, and if you have a misconfigured CCTI family where you're looking at service request, but really the CCTI family does not apply to that, you're still going to see the default of all the categorizations. Okay, so it's just an admin configuration where you just have to line up the right CCTIs per form for that particular organization to be able to leverage this. Any questions here before I go to one final thing on the configuration parameters as well? Okay. So one final thing on the configuration parameters, even though you have these CCTI families, you do have the ability to also include a checkbox. So just in case you have not configured it correctly or you're still in the process of rolling this out, you can set this checkbox up. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and say yes to apply changes for this particular config parameter. But basically what this does is it gives you the ability, when you do the lookup on the tickets, you get a checkbox that says, show me all the CCTIs, regardless of the CCTI families. And for this to take effect, I do have to log out and come back in. But again, this is something that would not change on a daily basis. So while I do that, again, if there are any questions, please post them in the Q&A or just unmute your line.
There's one question that came in, Sandeep, that I think is worth discussing on the line is, can I associate CCTI families to root organizations to have all generic CCTIs which are applicable to all organizations?
Sure. I mean, the short answer is yes, but I mean, I guess the bigger question is, you're probably better off not doing it at all, because if you don't associate those categorizations with the root org, they're going to see it anyways. So, while technically, yes, you could, the effect of not doing it is also the same, if that makes sense. Just a real quick thing over here. Again, you can see, actually I didn't pick my requester org, so that's why I'm seeing everybody here. Let me go back to customer A, who was my Microsoft guy. And if I look up here on the CCTI, I'm limited to only the Office or the Microsoft components, but I also see this particular checkbox now because of the config parameter that we enabled. And if you go here now, you're going to see everything, right? So it kind of allows the analyst to step out of that box or that CCTI family and see the others if they wanted to see it. Okay. So again, hopefully this helps our customers. I know this has been a top-rated idea on the community. So I guess it's been a long-awaited request, and I'm glad that we could do it in this manner. Again, collaborating on the community side itself to make sure that we're addressing the right use case here. Okay.
And Sandeep, one other question came in that's a good one. Is there a limit on the number of CCTIs that can be associated with the CCTI family?
Actually, no. So you can go ahead and create as many CCTI or other class and category combinations as you would want to, and they would all basically just be linked up to that combination. So all you do is just go back in here and just keep adding the CCTIs here. And the one good thing, again, the one advantage of the setup that we have, if I were to, let's say we created this CCTI family, and let's just say, we did it for customer B, and now we have a new site that's coming up for this particular customer. If we were to create a new child org for this customer B, and let's just call it is from Barcelona. If I go back to the CCTI families, I can see that has automatically been added because the first time I added this, I said to inherit all the child organizations. So anytime you add more child orgs or child sites to this customer, it's automatically going to be applied. You don't have to come back and reconfigure it. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So let's move on to the email update that we did for discarding some of the messages there. And really all it is in the configuration parameters. So if I go to the config parameters, and this is one place where, again, you can control a lot of the customizations or configurations, as we call it, within the product. And one of the config parameters that we have introduced with Clover is, if you just search for subject, you'll see this. It's really to add on to the system-defined strings that we already have for anything that you may want to configure additionally to discard. So, again, we have heard quite a bit from customers where, you might have an event storm that comes in, and you really want to just go in because that event storm is coming in through email. You just want to go in and cut that off by just putting in a discard message. And so that's one use case. The other one is also when you have users across the globe, they may have different email tools, they may have different languages, and not all of them have the same out-of-office reply or string that we're looking for. So this is a real neat way of just coming in again and saying, you know what, I want to also put in something in Spanish or something in a different language that the system is not accounting for. And the minute you do this, really, the next email that comes with the new string that you have attached will be discarded and will not create new tickets and cause issues there. Okay. Again, very simple, but again, one of the things that a lot of our customers have been asking for, and now this control is transferred over back to the admins where they can configure these different strings. Any questions on the email processing aspect? Okay. And then the last piece really here is on the REST APIs that Rich mentioned. And again, this is an enhancement to our existing Outbound Web Services. As Rich mentioned, it's a functionality where you can pretty much interact with a third-party system, whether it is to look up fields, whether it is to send data to the other side, some sort of e-bonding. You can pretty much use the web service operations feature for that kind of capability. So in this case, so far what we used to have was we did have support for JSON and XML, but the way we were doing it was based on kind of almost, think of it as one-dimensional data structure. So with this particular improvement, what we're doing here is also enabling nested or arrayed data sets that you can pass on. So in this case, you can see here, previously we would have just, projects and pretty much at one level we would have it. Now with the new improvement, I can have nested where I can have fields, and within fields I can have a project, and within project I can have multiple fields to say this is the key, this is the name, this is the description, and then coming out of it, summary, description, so on and so forth. So again, just the ability to pass in a multiple payload within that call, that was again something that we were missing that we did not have previously, and now with this one, again, we address a lot of the configurations or the integrations that customers are looking to do, whether it is with their own homegrown systems or known third-party systems, again, other ticketing systems, Jira, whatever else that you may have. Okay. So again, this is just a quick enhancement and really enabling that integration team to do some really cool stuff from a data exchange standpoint. Any questions on the web service operations or the multiple payload enhancement here? All right, I think that's all I had. I think we can, Rich, we can go back to you and go over the roadmap.
Sounds good. Any questions on the phone while we're switching control here? All right. And there's been lots of questions come in on the Q&A. Just a reminder to try to use the Q&A feature. It should be on the bottom right-hand panel of WebEx for you, and we'll keep an eye on that. Okay. So now onto the roadmap. I think there's a couple things we want to cover here, set the stage for some of the things we're working on and some of the feedback we have heard from many of you. So first of all, I talk about the roadmap. I always like to talk about sort of where we've been. It's good to get a perspective of what's happened over the last few years. Really, with the release of NIM Self-Service Desk 7, I don't know how many of you were on that exact release or know it still as NIM Self-Service Desk, but that all started in December 2012, and we had lots of releases between December 2012 and April 2013 and the summer as well. So, but really over the last year, So this is the third release during this calendar year. We had Bamboo, MR1, which was a large maintenance release. We typically, those are much smaller, and that had a lot of feature improvements as well, and then certainly with Clover as well coming out in November. So from a customer request standpoint, and what's really, I think, defined our roadmap going forward is these, 5 items, I would say. So I think the first thing we have heard loud and clear from customers is less downtime during maintenance. As I mentioned before with the Clover release, we put several improvements in Bamboo and Bamboo MR1, and they really set us up to be able to improve things in Clover. So we fixed some of these architectural improvements. Many of you know the term in Agile, sort of the technical debt, trying to get some of those things buttoned up so we can really start moving very quickly and improving our amount of downtime needed during upgrades. So I'll talk a little bit more about that and how we'll improve things in future releases. The next item was more improvements for managed service providers. So we do have a large percentage of our customers who are managed service providers who support external customers, and they need some more improvements to things like organizational-based security, to things like CCTIs, and the new CCTI family feature came exactly from input from existing managed service provider customers. So a lot of focus in that area of improving the product. Additionally, improved productivity for analysts, and I think this really relates to the ticket center workspace in the ticket, what we call the ticket detail form. So the ticket center, I think, having a lot more flexibility in filtering and finding things and being able to quickly find the tickets that the analyst is working on, as well as the ticket detail page, being able to filter things for the analyst, have a lot more context around that, so really improving the productivity, because we've heard from many organizations, if you're adding clicks to that level 1 analyst, you're slowing them down, and you can absolutely calculate those costs over time. When you think about how much work an analyst does in a service desk system, you sum that up across all your analysts over all the days they work over a year, it's significant. Additionally, address further ideas from the community. We have seen fantastic uptake on the community. I think it's really a great space. I've said it many times before. When we announced retirement of the old community, which was on the NIMSOFT support site, support.nimsoft.com, the post to announce end of supporting that community was the second post in the last 6 months at that point. So moving to this new community site that we have that has ideas, that discussions, blogs, all sorts of great stuff, videos as well, all these webcasts go there. We're seeing 300 to 400 active users a day visiting the site, which is great. I think that's really tremendous and shows there was a need for it and shows that people are getting value out of that. So we want to make sure that we're listening to our users, that we're improving things in the product based on ideas from the community. And from you as existing customers, essentially. Lastly, and certainly not least, is more predictable and consistent release cycle. So I think we varied how long these releases are. We like to do one every, about 4 months. Bamboo was a much longer release, about 9 months. Bamboo MR1 was about 3 months. So we varied that, and I think what we've heard from customers, having a more predictable and consistent release schedule will really help everyone out to be able to improve their planning and be ready for upgrades as well. So what we're rolling out, starting with Clover, is this new release cadence that will do an update every quarter. The target production release will be in the middle of the quarter. So again, November is the middle of the 4th quarter calendar year, then Dragonfly, our next release, in February. So we really want to make this a much more predictable cycle and focus really on the date of delivery as being the primary target. So you're getting value out of with new features, new functions, new operational improvements every quarter as we move forward. So I think this helps us internally at CA really get focused on a better release cycle, and I think we'll give our customers a lot more value and a much more predictable and transparent release cycle as well. So I'm very excited about that. I think that'll really add value to you as customers and to us as CA as well. So that being said, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of those other points, sort of the 5 areas of focus. I wanted to make sure everyone saw the roadmap and our plans going forward. So the existing release is in that first column. This is our CA standard roadmap communication slide, is our existing release. The planned release is coming out next is Clover, is that middle column. And the last column is all the things that we're working on for the next couple of releases that you see here. So I think just mentioning a few here, the top customer idea is really optimizing the end user experience, making it easier to attach files, to take it before initial save. That's, I think, in the top 5 on the community. Improvements to data extracts, being able for customers to manage their own data and pull that and have that for on-premise reporting. Advanced reporting, there are a lot of enhancements around advanced reporting on the community. We want to have more data sets exposed to require less sort of customization of the reporting domain on your side. So being able to have data sets for the knowledge base and better SLA and resolution reporting, I think will really help. And Process Designer, we've seen some good requests on the community for being able to export and import workflows. So if you build a workflow on staging, you get it exactly the way you want it, being able to export that, import it into production without having to do necessarily like a refresh or anything like that, or have to manually create it. And then last point I'll mention here, because I'm keeping an eye on time, is more on the service provider side, so managed service providers, improving the ability to do multi-tenant single sign-on. So if you as a managed service provider have 3 customers, you can set up single sign-on for each of those customers separately. And today, you only can have 1 single sign-on to the system, and we know that limits people. So that'll really help out others as well. Last thing I'll mention here is again, near zero downtime is what we're really working towards. We think we can really help customers out and enable us to get those releases out faster without having to disrupt your schedules as well. So in summary, and before we open up for more questions, I've seen more questions coming in on the Q&A feature. But to summarize Clover and sort of the key features there are the CCTI family, allows better grouping of CCTIs or your categorizations to filter the view for analysts based on the organization they're working with. Inbound email improvements, so better handling of out-of-office messages and those types of things, and being able to handle those in multiple languages depending on the customers and the environments you support. Form-based single sign-on for the mobile app as well, which I think will really improve adoption for self-service users. And then last but certainly not least, the Outbound Web Services enhancements to handle more complex payloads via REST calls as well. So I think that'll, for those of you who want to do more integrations with external systems with a REST API, you have some more capabilities there. As far as the rollout schedule, we are targeting the rollout for the month of November. We don't have exact dates yet. By the end of this month, we'll be communicating staging upgrade dates. So we want to get those out. What we're going to try to do is get those staging dates out as early as we possibly can to give you more notice on when you need to be ready to do some testing and validation and staging. And then additionally from when we'll formally then announce the staging and production dates shortly after those target staging dates. And then next on the quarterly release cadence. So I want to make sure everyone's aware of this. We will be doing quarterly releases in the middle month of the quarter. And the next target release is what we call a Dragonfly that'll be coming out in February of 2016. Overall with this, one of the things we wanted to also do with the quarterly release cadence is just have these releases be smaller, that we're constantly delivering value and being able to improve on the quality side as well. If we're changing less, it certainly means that the quality should be higher. We're going to be doing a lot more testing because we're more focused on a few features at a time. And I think that'll make it easier for you once things get into staging to do validations rather than having to jump around and look at 10 different features. You're going to be looking at 3 or 4 features per quarter and having your team being able to validate and feel confident about the release when it goes out into production. Okay, I will pause there for questions. So if there are any questions on the phone, you can ask a question now with #6. And I see lots of questions on the Q&A and a couple on chat that I'll try to address as well. Okay. There is one question I'll answer that came in on chat. The last two releases were followed by a lengthy outage. Our measures being put into place to minimize the risk for Clover. We lost some production time there. So we don't have the exact outage time frames yet or dates for Clover. We absolutely believe that the outage during the upgrade will be less for Clover. We're still doing a lot of testing to get actual numbers that we can communicate to customers, but it will be less. Additionally, I think we're doing a much better job on sort of focused on a few small features that should improve the quality, and a much better job on testing ahead of time. So it's our belief that we should absolutely have less impact and less hot fixes post this upgrade compared to others. So that's a good question. Sandeep and Prasanna, anything else that came in on Q&A that you guys wanted to mention on the phone?
No, I think most of the questions have been answered. I just see one coming in for Jasper.
Okay. Any questions on the phone? Again, it's #6 or #6 to ask a question.
Yeah, one question about a slide earlier on. For the defects that were resolved on an individual customer basis, are any of those going to be implemented for the entire customer base? And if so, will there be a kind of a defect resolution sheet that'll be distributed, or how will that work?
Yes, very good question. So with each release, we do have a release notes and a list of resolved issues that are put on the wiki, and we'll send those out as soon as possible. Those should be done in the next week or two, and I'll certainly share with the community post when those are available. And we do share all the release information, including this webcast, the release notes, known issues, resolved issues, with the release announcement that goes out over email and the community. As far as specific issues that were addressed for one particular customer, I don't know, Sandeep, if you want to jump in here, but typically if it's a bug, we fix the bug and it's fixed in the instance and all of the environments essentially as a SaaS solution. So it should, if you had a individual, a issue you reported and the defect was resolved, it should be resolved for all customers. Okay. Sandeep, anything you want to add there?
No, I think she was answering the other question here. I'm sorry, I didn't get the the full.
That's all right. I think we're good there. Yeah. So any defects, since it's a single application in each data center, if one customer raises a defect, we're fixing it for everyone.
That is correct. Yes. So I mean that's that's the advantage of a multi-tenant SaaS solution. So you're right, Rich. Any issue that we fix goes to all tenants across all data centers.
And one question came in about the recording of this WebEx. It will be shared and posted to the community. I posted as a YouTube video as well as I put the presentation up there as well. So anyone can access that, and it usually takes about 48 hours to get everything done. So by the end of the week, that will be on the community. Any other questions on the phone? Okay. There's another question that just came in here. Okay. Well, if there are any other questions, we will take them on WebEx Q&A. So Sandeep, Prasanna, and myself will hang around. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and end the audio session and stay on WebEx. So if anyone has any other questions, feel free to ask them on WebEx Q&A. Otherwise, we will stop the recording and close down the audio and look for your feedback on the community and any other questions you have as well. All right, thanks everyone. I appreciate your time.